United Health Group stock UNH got around 8% in stock movement today to the upside, closing at 347, getting above that $339 level where we saw that being the top of this range once we gapped down heavily. Now we've begun filling that gap, guys. So we did get a huge movement to the downside over, last few months. We had that nice peak all the way to 621 being all-time highs, and we found a pretty bad descending range getting all the way down to the floor of 234 really, but we did come up, try to find a little bit of support at 255, got that bounce, try to trend back up. We looked like we were in a good positive spot for the bulls, but then we fell further down, guys, and it really wasn't looking good. But now we see a nice recovery, a gap up, a little bit of chop, and now today we've seen a continued movement up after we broke that 317, gapping up and going, closing at that 347, getting within that gap down range. And now some of you might be asking, what caused this type of movement? Well, we had a few things going on. So today, the company said about 78% of its Medicare Advantage members are expected to be in 4-star or higher plans by 2026. And this boosted investor confidence since, higher ratings, bring larger government bonus payments, and UNH has reaffirmed its 2025 adjusted earnings guidance, which is showing stability despite cost pressures. So we do see some nice fundamentals coming to the stock finally after being so beat up and having all these bad earnings and bad fundamental news come in really dragging the stock downwards. We do see some nice bullish momentum, and we are in a very nice spot, guys, finally breaking that 339, especially breaking that 326 where that was that high right here. We really rejected hard, leading to a further move to the downside. So very nice stuff that we did chop a bit and breeze right through that spot, continuing to the upside. So today we're going to be analyzing what we should be expecting. Should we expect a full gap fill here and really correcting from this large movement to the downside, or is this just going to be a nice little hype train that goes on for a bit before sellers step right back in, continuing this overall large move to the downside? All right, guys, on the weekly, what we see here was a very strong stock in the past, right? We found this ascending profile after stock wasn't doing too much. We just see stock really climb up, right? We have a little bit of back and forth, but for the most part, we're climbing up like a mountain. Very strong stock. And then eventually we get within a range of 432 being that bottom. And if we draw out the top here, guys, we were kind of battling around that 528 level, medium term 500 level, 530 give or take. And we were bouncing between this zone for a bit of time before trending upwards, getting the all-time highs of 621. Where we see a pretty harsh rejection. And instead of reclaiming that zone and bouncing between trying to retest, we see a premature break of that zone again, but that leads to a very harsh rejection and selling pressure, bringing us all the way down to the floor of around that 255. If you take the drawings off, that's where you see a little bit of a bounce here, right? Buyers do try to find that momentum. We see that buying pressure here at that zone, given if we zoom out real quick. We did really pick up steam at that zone in the past, right? We had that kind of back and forth. Volatility was picking up, and once we got past that zone, marked out right around that 255, that's where you see that very strong ascending profile come into play. Less chop, less of a smaller climb, more of a very narrow and steep momentum up to the upside before finding that 533. So once we hit around that zone, that's where you see that buying pressure. And then buyers are trying to squeeze up, looking pretty good. But we can't correct much of this movement at all, given that very drastic move to the downside in a small amount of time. And we end up going lower, which was definitely a big concern for the buyers, given that that was a pretty strong spot to hold. Some investors were definitely getting pretty scared to see where the stock was headed. But then we do have some good news come in, good earnings reports, and UNH does recover. So we do see that bounce right here. And we see a nice green white bar, a little bit of chop for around 3 weeks. And then once again, guys, the continuation up that we saw today, breaking past that very important 339, that really marking out that kind of top of that range that we've been in for some time. So from the weekly perspective, yes, we are still beat up, but this is some nice price action, really finding that volatility and just strong buyer presence that we haven't seen with this stock for a very long time. So far, looking quite nice on the weekly, and it looks like we have found a bottom here given this strong price action. All right, guys, turning back to the daily time chart. So giving you guys a little bit of a better perspective, we say that 339, given that we saw a big gap down here after trying to retest that 621 zone, but we end up gapping down pretty hard, continuing to the floor, try to meet back up with this kind of support level here, but we do gap down once again, and that top really is that 339. We see that we wick off that spot, continue that movement to the downside. We find that resistance right around that 255 where we do come back upwards. We find this ascending profile, and the buyers are starting to win these fights. So the buyers squeeze out of this resistance once again, meet back up with that ascending support, squeeze out of this resistance here, and then we try to find that break of 326, but that's where we find that big rejection. So we can't get back to that 339, which is the ultimate top of this range. and we do trend further down to that 234, which then we did get back above, reclaiming that 255 and this ascending profile, this ascending support. And then we gap up very nicely, chop around for a bit, and you see that we really do gap above that 326, which was that previous high right here, finding that ascending profile, leading to that big rejection move down. Good technical little thing to look at for UNH. Definitely a good spot that we gapped right over that. Sellers couldn't push us back under. We continued very strongly to the upside. And now the fact that we've broken out of that 339, you would want to be looking for that complete gap fill. So that complete gap fill would bring us around that 375. If we can continue good momentum here, guys, that will be the ultimate target. Around that $375 level where we'd want to see price continue up. If we do see a little bit of rejection, since we haven't been within this spot for some time, guys, you definitely want to see that 339 hold up as some nice support. Instead, given that that was a previous rejection spot, you want to see it hold up as support, and that'd be the top of this candle here, getting within this range. And you want to see us continue trending to the upside. Do we have to come back down here? Not necessarily, no, guys. We could continue in this volatile movement to that $375 level, but if we do see sellers try to step in after a very nice day, you don't want to see sellers get more than around half this candle back in their favor, and you would want to see this hold up as support in that case scenario. But otherwise, guys, we could be continuing this trend upwards since we broke out of this overall range. As long as the buyers can stay aggressive here and volume can keep flushing in, I don't see why not. We could definitely be seeing a nice gap fill to that 375. So right now, just continuing in this volatile fashion, we did see a little bit of chop here after that big move upwards and found a nice ascending profile. But right now, we are in a very volatile spot where we kind of gapped up and continued. So looking for that continuation of this volatile movement. All right, guys, now on the hourly, we see that very nice break today. So this was the chop zone that we were in for a bit of time, at 295 and that 317 roughly. Going back and forth a bit, but the buyers were getting that upper hand. Since we did gap up and then we did find a nice ascending profile, kind of chop around once we broke that range, and then that led to a gap up. You see that lower rig just at that 326, that being that previous high, that previous resistance point. And instead of that being a point where we'd get back under, we end up using that as support. So it's a quite reactive stock as resistances can turn into support levels. That's why we're talking about that 339. If the sellers try to push it back down, watch for that to hold as support as well, and then bounces back up, continuing to the upside in this gap fill. But we did end up hitting 351 being the ultimate high today. We closed at 347. It makes sense because we haven't tested above that 339 for a long time. So there is predetermined selling pressure here around this zone. But you do want to see stock continue, guys, in this nice manner. If we do find a little bit of a pullback, watch for that support level to hold, continuing to the upside. Anything's possible, right? We could be chopping around here after a nice volatile move up, kind of reclaiming the zone. You could be seeing a little bit of a pennant structure form, this holding as a nice support, and then a nice squeeze-like effect up, kind of finding a resistance and a support level here. Does that have to happen? Once again, no. We could be continuing in a pretty volatile fashion to the upside. The buyers winning these fights, kind of stair-stepping upwards in a quicker fashion to that 375. And for the bears, you definitely want to see price get back with under that 339, kind of reject there again, and then head to the downside. Because if we look on the weekly, guys, we are still in a overall obvious descending motion. We have found a very nice change in momentum though, guys, breaking through this kind of range that we had right here. Very monstrous day today. So I think that we are looking very nice to the upside. But like I said, guys, a lot of bearish pressure historically with this stock as of recent times. So the sellers are going to try to make their moves. It's just about the buyers reacting well. And it is a reactive stock as far as support and resistance zones. So I think that as long as good fundamentals can continue coming in with the stock, guys, and we can be reactive as far as support and resistance levels, we're in a very nice spot here. And the fact that we broke through that 339 today, guys, with ease, as well as that 326 gapping above that and using that as support, I think we have a lot of nice indicators here that we are headed for that gap fill, reaching that $375 level. So that's all I got for you guys today. If you want to see more UNH videos, make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know your price predictions for the stock in the comments below. As always, guys, trade smart. I will see you all on the next one.